Right. So unfortunately, our mayor and mayor pro tem are not here. So we're going to call the meeting to order. And if I can get everyone to rise and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we don't have a formal agenda tonight. Tonight is an animal control workshop. So there won't be any, everything will be technically a public comment, correct? And there won't be any public hearings. So I'm going to hand this off to Marissa.
Thank you. So tonight is a very informal meeting. For regular council meetings, you have to fill out comment cards and go up to the podium to speak. You don't have to do that tonight. If you can just try not to speak over one another, and if you have something you want to say, maybe just raise your hand to get everybody's attention so they know if they're speaking, maybe you want to speak next. All of these microphones should work. Just push the button and it'll turn the light on. And then when you're done speaking, if you can turn it off, just so that if you're whispering to your neighbor, it doesn't pick it up when someone else is speaking. The council's not voting on anything tonight. It's just an opportunity for them to hear what the community wants as far as animal control. This doesn't have anything to do with the contract with Gimme Love. We have a tentative agreement that should be on the agenda for the January 18th meeting. So this is just actual animal control stuff. And we do have our animal control officer here. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to meet him yet, Jonathan Bell. He is our animal control officer. Please don't put him on the spot and ask him questions. He is new. But we do want to hear from you as far as what you'd like to see in animal control. Am I missing anything? I think that's it. So if someone wants to get started, we are going to take notes, and the meeting is being voice recorded. It's just not being video recorded.
Can I ask a question first? What is the dog leash law here? Like, do we actually have a leash law? Is there like a requirement or anything like that?
There's not a specific leash law. There is a section that says that dogs cannot be roaming. So if they're with their owner and the owner has control of them, there's not something in the code currently that says they have to be on a leash. I don't know why we don't have one. It's just there's not one currently. So if that's something that the community would like to see, that's something that we could add to our list today for the council to consider.
I personally, I've been walking dogs, and honestly, I have noticed so many people who do not care if their dog jumps on you, anything. It's the weirdest thing that I've ever seen in my whole life. Sorry, I don't understand how people. Like, I mean, okay, I walk this specific dog. We're on Walnut Street, and every day it's a big black German Shepherd. I've asked her, like, hey, can you keep your dog away from me? And she just is like, it's my dog. He's not doing anything to you. He has not bit me, but he jumps on me, and if I fall, that's suing somebody. You know what I mean? Like that apartment building or whatever. But because I've mentioned something, and I have called the police department, she thinks it's even cuter to now have her dog jumping at me and sending it towards me. So my question is, like, why don't we? I mean, it should be a rule. Like, I don't understand. I should not have to worry about somebody else's dog jumping on me. I mean, my ankles are weak. I don't run a lot because of that reason. I don't want to fall and get hurt because somebody else can't take care of their dogs. And even on that, I've just seen so many millions of dogs. I just buried a dog the other day. I posted it on the city. I buried a dog because somebody dumped their dog out there. And I don't know why, but like what the requirements for not chipping and stuff like that, I don't understand. I don't understand why we are not forcing people to chip their dogs. There's so many people who have dogs that are just roaming the streets. My neighbors in Fox Hollow are just famous for that. I'm trying to socialize my dog that I adopted from Give Me Love, and I cannot because other people's do not care about their dogs and what's going on in our city. And how can we adopt dogs from there? Because a lot of dogs are being, they're already traumatized when they get to you guys. And then when we get them, we're trying to, bring them back to home and like show them love. And I can't show my dog love in any type of outdoor entertainment because other people are not, doing what their dog duties are, I guess. I do get that some dogs are great. Some dogs are really great off the leash and they really listen. But not all dogs are like that, and not all owners understand that. And so I don't know what I can do. I'm willing to do as much as I can. I'll I don't want to say complaining, but I really would like better attentiveness to their dogs. Like, what's the point of you having it if you're not going to take care of it? Some of us are really trying to make sure, taking care of dogs and stuff like that, and I just don't understand.
If you want to pass the microphone down, this way I could read what the current language says.
Okay.
Anybody has anything on changing it, and then I know Michelle has something that she wants to say in the back. So the current language in regards to restraining animals on a private premises, it says, the owner of or person responsible for a dog shall restrain said dog either by suitable leash, rope, I can't say that word, impenetrable wall, fence, or other barrier, or by constant supervision, such that the animal is prevented from leaving the owner or responsible person's property or supervision. So they are required to contain the dog, but it's not specific to a leash.
Right, it sounds like that's private property, like at the home. But she's talking out on the street, and I think that's something we do need to have done here in the county.
Yeah, and it's both. When I go onto the property, it is the Palm Apartments that I'm going on to. I would walk a dog from there. But no matter where I go, I see other dogs, and she, like I said, she officially now is following me with that dog, but, that's why I'm trying to learn the rules on the outside of that property. What are they outside, like, what's her requirements there? Because he's a big dog. He's a big German Shepherd. He actually reminds me of the dog Zeus that you guys had, except he's a big black German Shepherd. And, I mean, he could really do something to me if he wanted to, So, I don't know. I just want to learn the leash laws for sure, whatever the requirements are, because I don't want to get hurt, and I don't want to say something to somebody that is valid.
Well, that should be something that should be brought or added, because it is just common courtesy. Even if you're walking your dog and you don't have him on a leash, but you have a leash with you, and you see another dog approaching, then it's common courtesy. Put the leash on your dog, because I know that if our dog, we always have her on a leash, and she's just like, she sees another dog, and she says, oh, wow, it's a friend, she's nut. But,
So can I ask that if you have a request for something to be put as a recommendation, that you ask that you would like to make a recommendation, that way that signals our city clerk that she can write notes based on that. And I think that's a good idea. And I'd also like to add that just the leash, we also probably should put something with it to where that somebody actually has to be behind the leash. Because I've seen some people that think that there is a leash law and they just let their dog run with the leash hanging onto them. So I think that's a really good suggestion you have. But if we could get, just when you have a suggestion, if you could just say, I make a recommendation. And there is no right or wrong answer here. We're just going to throw all the recommendations to the city clerk. She's going to take notes, and then we'll bring all this stuff back at a further meeting.
I know Michelle has something she wanted to say, and then I saw Mary's hand and then Bill's. But Michelle, you don't have a microphone if you want to come up here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My question is, could you give us a brief rundown of what the city's laws are about animals, dogs and cats? I mean, do we have to have them licensed? Is that an annual license? Just so that we're not making suggestions that are already on the books.
Right.
You could just kind of give us a general idea.
Yeah, so I took notes on things that stood out to me, which doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be things that matter to you, so I may not cover stuff, and it's chapter 6, or title 6 in the city's municipal code, so it's a very long section. So what I noted was the number of animals people are allowed to have, because that's often a question. So you can have up to 2 pot-bellied pigs, no more than a total of 8 animals, but that does not count the 8 chickens that you can have. Dog licenses are mandatory. They are annual. The code says that dogs are required to be spayed or neutered at 5 months unless you have a breeding license. Cats can free roam, but they're supposed to be fixed at 4 months. So you're supposed to keep your cat indoors if it's not fixed and it's over 4 months of age. The fines currently for a first offense are $50, the second is $100, and the third is $200, and then the fourth time that your animal is picked up, where you would typically get a fine, you still get the fine, but you also then have to have a mandatory spay or neuter and microchip. And so those are the things that stood out to me. There may be other things in there that are important to you that I didn't write down, but it is a very long section. I have it up here if there's something somebody wants to know and they want me to look it up.
So there's no requirement to license your cats?
No.
Are free roaming.
Mary?
If it's considered an assault, if I went up and jumped on somebody, why would it be allowable for a person to allow their animal to jump on somebody?
That's a
Isn't
question
it-
for Sean or the chief.
That's a cheap question, but I don't understand if someone knows that their animal is going to do that and they don't restrain it, it seems that that should be wrong.
It's definitely a nuisance, so that could be where someone needs to speak to the owner of the dog.
Cause that could be another angle for you to look at.
Yeah.
If your animal is jumping on someone else, then you're not controlling it, and there should be some sort of,
I could sue her for the doctor, because she
But
just
that would-
needs to-
that would be a civil thing. If it's codified, then it's not your personal problem.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
So
but that's
it
only
seems-
if
it
it's
seems
a
responsible.
fierce,
If
dangerous,
that's
or
a
vicious
problem,
animal. It's not all dogs.
Then we need to address it as a community.
Yeah.
Everybody should be safe walking down the street.
Sorry, I'm not talking about my.
You said the person in campus or the apartment complex, so management?
Oh, I go management. There's a, it's that whole, what is it when your pet is
Service animal.
a service animal? It's that's, I
ESA
cannot
dog?
stand, that's the worst invention in the whole wide world to say that we do not need a license for that. Not every pet is a service animal, not every dog needs to be in the store, not every dog is, you know what I mean? There's a time and a place for your pet. And I just don't understand some of the stuff with that, but yeah, it needs to somehow change, I guess. I don't know if that's a whole state thing, but that service animal thing is,
I think putting them on a leash is going to be huge,
yes.
because I
I
know a
mean,
lot
that's all I
of
really
people
want, honestly.
are out trying to walk their animals, and another animal approaches, could be a nice animal, like you said. You
Yeah.
don't know how your animal's gonna react to that.
And there's definitely amazing
Could
people
pop
with
them out the
amazing
street.
dogs, it's just not everybody,
Yeah.
and that's the part that hurts the people with the great dogs, is the people with the not so great dogs, or people who don't care,
Yes.
so.
So in response to Ms. Jones, control of off premises, no person owning or harboring or having the care of a fierce, dangerous, or vicious animal shall suffer or permit such an animal to go beyond the premises of such persons unless the animal is securely leashed with a leash not exceeding 3 feet in length. So it is not legal for an animal to jump onto. They'd be in vicious dog at large, I believe is what that's called.
Well,
According-
even a friendly dog shouldn't be jumping on people.
It does say in one part of the code, any animal which molests passerby or chases vehicles is considered a public nuisance.
Okay.
So the issue here is that the code is huge, so, and
Yeah.
the idea of how one, that's gonna be, animal control and the police chief and the police department. And so that's kind of what this, maybe we can get some of these ideas going again and say, okay, well, what does the public want to see? And maybe we can make these easier to stick out. So then the city could come up with a little deal and say, okay, well, here's your major laws right here. Because it is a huge section of ordinances, and a lot of stuff is put into there. But to pick it out individually is quite the little process. So I'm kind of looking up everything as we go, just to try and give an idea, and I'm not perfect, so I'm just looking it up. Yeah.
And honestly, just the start of the leash law, just if people.
And
just keep
enforcing
it-
it.
Yes, if we could just keep them on the leash, that would make life a million times better. Cause then when she goes for her walks or whatever she's trying to do and that leash is on, I don't have to worry.
Yes.
The point of having the animal on the leash implies that the owner has control. If an animal is not leashed, then the owner does not have control. And that also overlaps into, if the animal is on a leash and the dog is jumping on you, the owner is not controlling that animal.
Exactly.
So we're right back where we started from.
Did you have something, Bill?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. One thing I wanted to mention to you, I don't know what the city feels about it, but I know people who carry a baseball bat. I know people who who
Sticks,
carry
yeah.
bear spray.
Get the bear spray, so you don't know.
If the dog is threatening you, or if you feel like you're going to be under attack, I think you're legally allowed to defend yourself with either a baseball bat or bear spray.
Reasonable force.
So I was
Sounds like a
reading,
voice of experience.
California has several dog-related laws. One of them being a leash law. There's a law about 4 months or older have to have rabies shots. About unattended dogs, dangerous dogs, annual licensing agreement, dog bites, and animal abandonment. It goes on and on. Inhumane treatment, if somebody's not treating their dog reasonably. And these are supposedly state laws. So I don't know if that is any kind of a template for the city. It seems like, for instance, and I have to admit, I've been remiss on this, if the dog does not have a license, you don't know if it could have rabies or not. You have to have a current, within 3 years rabies certificate in order to get a license. So if you see a dog without a license, and if Animal Control sees a dog without a license, even if they're on a leash, maybe they should say, you need to get a license, or I'm gonna write you up, because otherwise you don't know if the dog is gonna have rabies or something else. So, just wanted to mention that, there are some, state laws that govern how you treat animals.
So I think with most of those state laws, they're already incorporated into the ordinance with the exception of like a mandatory leash law. The dog licenses are required for all dogs in the city and they are required to wear them. So the dogs that are registered are required to display their registration tags and they are annual tags. Unfortunately, I mean, Sean, I don't want to put him on the spot, but he can probably tell you we have maybe less than a dozen registered dogs in Coalinga. I mean, it's very few.
It's hard to get them, that city license though, when there's no vet to do rabies for them. I mean, maybe when Tractor Supply comes in, if they bring a vet like all the others do, that would be one way to help with that, but as of now, but I mean, we've done 500 rabies vacs. Every dog we get fixed gets a rabies, so there's really you should have 500 dogs with a city license, at this point. You know, we did all that this year, so they're all ready to get it.
If that would have been a one-stop, I think if we could have done it all at one time. People are hesitant, you know, they don't wanna constantly bring their animals out. They don't wanna go to us and then come over here to you guys or whatever. So I think if we could have bundled it somehow, I think people would have been more apt to have it all done at one time, but maybe.
I think it's a great start that the city's gonna offer free licensing to the community.
So with that, I just wanted to ask the chief, or maybe Marissa, are we requiring in order to have a licensed animal and is it a state law that we have to have a rabies shot in order to license it?
Yes, so we did ask the city attorney if he could find a way around that, and he said no. The purpose of the city issuing a license is to verify that the dog has its current rabies vaccine, and the state requires that all dogs receive their first rabies vaccine. I think it's at 4 months, the first one.
6 months.
And so,
Or 6.
yeah, so we can't issue a license without proof of that.
I could be wrong, but it seems that that there's two sides of public opinion in Coalinga. There's one that says, let the dogs run free, they're not hurting anybody. And then there's people that want more control and they don't want dogs running around their neighborhoods, pooping and everything else. And there's a disconnect, and I think it stops us from working as a community. I would like to be able to go water my yard without having dogs come into my yard and attack my hose. They play, they're very playful. But there's some dogs in my neighborhood that they're very social, but they're big dogs. I'm not gonna do any breed naming, but they're big dogs. And they're cute dogs, but they're dogs, and they're not my dogs. I can't let my cat outside because we have dogs, capital D, running around my neighborhood. And it's not like they're lost dogs. It's not like they just escaped. They're just out. And I don't know what consequences are out there that we could encourage people to keep their dogs in their yards.
Money really
But
hurts people's pockets.
I'm the only house in my neighborhood that does not have a dog. So in my yard, in my backyard especially, I'll have a dozen cats because it's a haven. But, and I don't live in some edge of town, well, I guess we're sort of on the edge of town, but I don't, I live in a fairly decent neighborhood, but we have a lot of dogs just running, and they're the same ones.
Yeah.
I even know the names of some of them.
Michelle, you had something too?
I guess my question is, if we've got a requirement that dog owners are supposed to license their dog, and in order to be licensed, they have to have a rabies shot, why don't we enforce that? I mean, if you're going to, have an animal, you need to be responsible for it. Now, is it possible that the city could somehow work with some group to have a low-cost rabies shot thing come into Coalinga, so you don't have to go to Hanford or Fresno or whatever to take your animals to vets? There are requirements to do things, to be a responsible citizen, and I think, why should we kind of try to overlook that or go around it? It's for public health and public safety. So,
Right, and I think to answer the question about why it's not enforced, it's kind of two-part. Is one, the city hasn't been very strict on the dog licenses because we don't have a vet, and it's very difficult for people to get rabies vaccines. We have reached out to multiple vets trying to get people here. We've offered free buildings. We've offered to help pay for stuff for them to get them here, whether they just come out to do a clinic or they want to open an office here, and we haven't had any luck. But the issue with, I know people say, well, why aren't these dog owners getting citations or fines? And they sometimes do, and you just don't know that they are. But the problem is if, I don't know, Hilda, for example, knows that this dog belongs at this house and she calls animal control and says, hey, this dog lives here and it's always out. Can you come cite the owner? And he takes the dog to the door and says, hey, your dog's out. And they say, that's not my dog. How does he prove that it is? It's just Hilda's word. And I've had citizens say, well, we have a recording. We know that dog lives there. Okay, but it's the same thing, like you can't take a recording of a car speeding down the highway and send it to CHP and say, hey, mail this person a ticket because they were speeding. Like, they have to witness that. He has to be able to prove that he knows that that dog lives there so he can find them. So there are times when it happens. It's just not as easy as people think. Just because somebody knows that a dog belongs at a certain house, he can't go and cite them for that.
We have a thing that says basically when you own a dog, it's your property. And in the city code, it says if you switch the ownership of the dog to anybody, that it's supposed to be, you were supposed to come down, it's like a car, you're supposed to come down and switch it or it's your fine. And if we have this rule that they're supposed to be microchipped when we first pick them up, if we microchipped every dog when we picked them up, we registered it to that person's name right then, take a picture of their driver's license, something, put it on that paperwork, and then said, look, this is, because a lot of times the first time we pick them up, people come back, usually the first time they'll come for that dog. Now we say, okay, now we've signed the dog back out to you, you've paid your whatever fee, we have your microchip number, now that dog's got a tag that can't be taken off. And now we can say, forevermore, you're gonna pay a fine if that dog's on the street, and if you give it to someone, because that's the big thing, people say, oh, it ran away, I gave it to someone, well, it's your responsibility. So if it's out, and we pick it up, you pay the fee every time, until you come down with whoever you're giving it to and sign paperwork that says, Bob, I am signing over Sparky to you, like he is your problem. Bob signs off and says, yes, I accept responsibility for Sparky. It says in the code that that's how it's supposed to be, that they're supposed to, they say it's for licensing, but you could do it for microchips too. And they can't, it's not like they can take a microchip off. And even if they don't register the microchip on their end, a number will still ping when we scan it. So even if they don't activate it thinking they can get away with it, when we scan it, we still have a detailed number that is assigned to that dog. And then granted, it's not gonna catch every dog, but a lot of the repeat offenders, the ones that are the pain in the butt, they're always out, then now you can say, that dog belongs to, you know, Paul or whoever signed up for that dog. Why not just enforce that?
Lori, can you refresh our memory? What exactly, when somebody goes to the shelter and gets the animal, adopts an animal or takes it home, what do you guys do for the, for that person that's getting the dog? What do you do? Do you give shots? Do you give, what is it that you?
Yeah, they get vaccinations on intake, and then they get microchips before they leave. It's California state law that when an animal comes into a city shelter, it cannot leave without a microchip. So we microchip those animals. We do not, most of the time when a dog is microchipped, you are responsible for registering it with that microchip maker. And then there's usually a fee with that. We don't do that. We were really lucky. Fresno Humane stepped in and they register it for the people. So no one has to pay a fee to do that. It's all free. It's also put into our system, so we know who that dog belongs to. So it's done both ways. So it's also put into a national base where if it leaves this town, somebody else finds it and has it scanned, then that's registered. It is not left to the dog owner to register.
Okay, shots.
We are doing that.
Do you have to update their shots all the time?
No.
No? So
We
once they,
offer free vaccinations right now because we have a grant with Petco.
so once they get the shots, I'm just thinking of my Jane. Did you give her rabies shot? Did you give her all
No,
her
we
shots?
don't do rabies. We cannot give rabies vaccinations at all, but we do the parvo distemper.
Okay, so she didn't get that, so I need to take her to get her rabies shot.
No, when she was fixed, she had her rabies.
If it's adopted out of our city shelter,
Yes, we did.
it has its rabies.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because
when we fix
we have to get them
dogs, we do
spayed or
that.
neutered, so when we send it over spay or neuter.
And we wanna give it back, we'll just take the chip out and give her Jane back to you, right?
So,
Stuck with Jane, Missy.
I know.
so how many of those animals that we chip that come in on intake do we actually know who owns them, or is there a lot of those that are just unknown? Like when they
No.
come into the shelter, like you pick up an animal on the street and then you chip it, it comes into the shelter. Do we know who all of those animals belong to, or do we not know who they belong to?
Okay, hold on. So you mean when I microchip them, am I just putting a microchip and not registering it?
Well, no, what I mean is like, let's say you go down on 4th Street and there's an animal there and you intake and you microchip it. Obviously, if you don't know who it is, then you would register it, but you wouldn't register it to a person because you don't know who that person is. So my question is that do most of the animals that you microchip, do you know who their owners are? Are they registered to that owner, or do they come in and registered anonymously?
We do not microchip them until they are headed back home. So I'm not, the microchips are too expensive. I'm not gonna microchip a dog until the owner picks it up. When the owner comes to pick it up, we microchip it at that point, so it automatically gets registered to that owner. Should a dog come in and I've had it a week and no one ever responds to pick it up, then I do not microchip that dog because I'm sending it to rescue, and rescues will have that done when the dog's fixed. There's no reason for me to spend our money and our microchips on animals that are leaving.
Right.
So we do not do that.
To rescue.
Yeah.
To rescue, only back to owner.
Right. I just want for the public to understand that like the entire world of dogs are not getting microchipped in Coalinga. And that maybe that's something someone wants to make a recommendation that the city tries to find a way to start microchipping some of these animals, because looking at the numbers, because I did see the numbers that you put out on Facebook, there were not that many dogs that were surrendered back to owner, which means that if they weren't surrendered back to owner, then you didn't microchip them. So there's not very many of them, unless owners came in and did a program with you.
Dogs aren't sent back out into Coalinga.
No.
Right.
they're not.
Right.
Those dogs that come in, if an owner comes to pick it up, we microchip it, it's registered to them, it goes back home. Other dogs that stay in the shelter are gonna go to rescue. When they go to rescue, they are not microchipped by us, they're microchipped by the rescue themselves. I'm not spending, you're talking $10 a chip out of our pocket to do that, so, or the city purchased the last one, so no, we do not microchip those dogs, but those dogs are not put back out on the streets of Kalinga.
But we also have
So
to
no
hold,
dogs come out in Kalinga without a chip?
If they've been in our shelter.
Or
If
no
they've
dog.
been in our
trouble.
shelter, no,
Yes.
they don't come out without a chip.
How much did you say microchips are per dog?
About $10 now.
So when we're talking about being able to understand where animals are and understand their owners, like when Miss Jones was talking about that these animals, that's why a lot of these animals are not microchipped, is because they're not coming back onto our streets. And so they're not microchipped. And so then if you were to send animal control out there and they were going to try and scan them, the only way they would be microchipped is if they were self-microchipped by the person that actually paid for it, or they came back onto the street, which the numbers showing the amount of dogs coming back onto the street is very small. So that's not a very a large number. So maybe that's something someone wants to request if we want to understand where the animals are coming. But still, I mean, just like she's saying, would it make sense if we don't even know who the owner is of the animal? So then we microchip them. I don't know, maybe you assign a John Doe to it or a name to it. That way that you could say, hey, this dog has been out multiple times and where has this dog been seen at? Because part of the thing that we've been struggling with here at the city is where are these animals coming from? Certain areas of town seem to have more animals than others. And some are repeat offenders. I mean, I've today seen the animals at Starbucks that people are talking about, right? And so it just seems to me like anytime those animals get picked up, maybe it would be a good idea to have them microchipped. And I'm not saying that we should use the shelter's money to do it. Maybe the city should look into seeing how we could step in and step up our game to allow that so that we could have better tracking of these animals. That's just an idea. So maybe if you could put that as an idea, Shannon, from me, to do something better with microchipping.
So we do not, so dogs out on the streets that maybe have never been in our shelter, they are still microchipped out there. We have a ton of people that come into the office daily to get their dogs microchipped. So necessarily you might find a dog, let's say Starbucks for instance, because those dogs are known. We drove around and we did a vaccination clinic and we microchipped animals all over town. We've done that. So that could be a dog possibly that we did on one of our runs or our clinics. So they've never been in the shelter, but yet they could have a microchip because simply we microchipped to them outside of the shelter.
So would more of those type of where you do microchipping and stuff like that, more of the citizenry being told, hey, we want you to microchip your animals. I mean, I've even heard people say, hey, they want a mandatory microchip of an animal. I mean, I don't know how the public feels about that. I'm just relaying information that I've heard from people. I've heard mandatory about all kinds of things. And then I've heard the SPCA and the SPCA say different things as well. And PETA says different things. But this is our community, and I think this is kind of our, time to say, hey, what recommendations do people have? It's not saying that we can do it or that's financially doable, but if people have a suggestion on something like that, maybe that's something we should think about.
I think let's just use Starbucks dogs for a little bit because they're out and about and we've been watching them for a while. Maybe when the animal control officer makes his first contact with either those dogs or from somebody else's dogs and he's actually talking to the owner, he scans and at that time if they're not chipped, he chips them right there on the spot with paperwork.
Okay, but who's responsible for them if they don't have an owner and they're just running around
Well,
loose?
I mean, like,
Don't
I
you
would
when
say
you're not?
That's not gonna
you can't text
solve
those dogs,
that,
but if
but-
he's making contact at the home,
At least
if he's visiting a dog,
start.
and he's visiting
Because
the
if you
owner,
microchip
because there's something
chip,
going
then
on.
you're responsible.
Well,
Like the Starbucks people.
Yeah, and Hilda, kind of one of the ideas is that we have a lot of these dogs that are very elusive and they're out all the time, and maybe if we had just assigned them a number until we find out who the owner is, then we'd be like, okay, well, we've seen this dog here, we've seen this dog here, we've seen this dog here. Now we have a dog that's habitually out, and now we know. And then when we find out who that owner is, we could attach their name to it. Can you modify the microchip after the fact or no? You can.
You couldn't even
Okay.
register it in the main system, it would just be in ours and then.
Okay. I was just curious.
But how do we really go about picking, let's just be honest, there's a lot of dogs out in Coahuila. I'm gonna say my area, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I feel like at least on Houston Street towards the Worthing, it's a little bit of a poverty area, and there is a lot of dogs there. Is it because nobody cares? Is it because, their situation? But honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I drove down that street and I hit one of their dogs, and they're like, oh, it's okay, he's always getting it, and I'm like, you have some sense.
And then it's detrimental for you as a
You
driver.
have attention to, but,
The
I don't know, and I've
fences
seen
are
him roaming
broken.
Kalinga all the time, so how do we really get those dogs picked up? How do we get people to realize, like, you can't just have your dogs in the street like that, like, what is the point of you having it? It's better off taken from you in the first place, and I do know that, like, I think we're a no-kill shelter, and I understand this no-kill shelter thing, but like, it just seems like people just having dogs and just abandoning them over and over, like, the same people.
There's no teeth.
Yeah.
So to speak.
So generally in Coalinga, if a dog is healthy and it's out on the street, it's not picked up. It's if it's sick, injured, vicious, it's a puppy, somebody picks it up and drops it off. But if it's just a stray dog, and that's not specific to Coalinga, this has been a topic that I have a quarterly city managers meeting with Fresno County city managers, and everybody does the same thing. The only city in the valley that I know that does not allow any stray dogs is the city of Corcoran, because they somehow finagled a deal with the city of Avenel where they can take them as many dogs as they want and they pay a flat fee. So that the city of Corcoran, you won't really see stray dogs. Every other city, they don't pick up strays. They only pick up sick, injured, or vicious, and everyone else is just sort of left to roam. And that's just what's going on right now. I mean, if we picked up every stray, we could have 10 shelters full of dogs, and people just go out and get new ones to replace them. They don't come for the ones that have been picked up. And it's unfortunate. And it's an issue with pet ownership, not with the people who are here because they care. And I know people have hands up, and Sean's been trying to get my attention, so let Sean talk and then we'll go around.
To help address a few of the concerns, mainly the microchip, me and Jonathan met with Lori and George yesterday to go over some of the stuff. Lori gave me the contact info for where they get the microchips, because there's a ton of them out there. I'm waiting to hear back from the company to see how, basically what it's gonna cost to replenish microchips, and then where we're gonna find the funding from on the animal control side of things, so that we can help with the microchipping. On the vaccinations, we're looking at doing, he's actually been in Jonathan's been in contact with some of the vets in the area to see what we can do to host some sort of, I guess, a clinic where we transport the dogs to the vet, get the shots done, help incur some of the costs if possible, at least the gas money, because we'll transport them for you guys, and then bring the dogs back vaccinated to where we can also do a license at the same time. We're kind of coming in behind the curve here with just getting animal control and starting to work with Baby Love, so this can take time to get these programs in play. But they are being worked on. So just give me a little bit so we can get this straightened out.
So I think one of the, to address one of the comments earlier, so we had a vaccination clinic here, I think last year. And we had 112 or 122 people show up for vaccinations, and the city had their stand with the licensing, and I don't know, $8, $12. I think we got 8 registered that day, because a buck or two, sometimes people just aren't gonna spend it. But the free licensing event, future vaccination events, you get your dog vaccinated, you're required to get the license in order to get your vaccination. I think that's going to go huge. And I think the ACO now doing the citations to people, once we can prove, and he has the proof and the PD has the proof that ownership is there, writing people citations and holding them accountable is going to make a difference. It's not gonna fix it, but hopefully it makes a difference.
I had a question. How hard is it for us to collect? Because I know that everyone wants teeth into here, because, pretty much the group of people here, from what I can understand from listening to, and this isn't my first rodeo on this, we've done this at least 3 times, where we've brought a bunch of people in and tried to figure this mess out. And pretty much what it always comes down to is we have some really horrible dog owners in town. That is the real deal. We have some really horrible dog owners, and it feels like, to me, that unfortunately that when you have a horrible group of people that are doing this to animals, that all of the regulation seems to fall onto the law-abiding folk. And I want to make sure that that's the case is that the people that are the ones that are the bad doers are the ones that catch this offense, and that we don't make something like, hey, yeah, we can say, hey, everyone has to register your animal. Everyone has to do this, this, and this. What you're going to get, if we went door to door, is you're going to get people that are going to say, oh, yeah, no problem, I'll do it. And then all those people are going to be probably most of your good dog owners that you have now. And the other ones are going to say they don't have animals. And they're going to continue to offend, and it's not going to address the issue. So I'm kind of looking for ways from the public that how do we get at the folks that are really doing this? Because from what I understand, we know who it is. Like, as in, when I say we, I mean the city as a whole, like, as in, like, the animal shelter, the animal groups, they know who it is. But it's like we can't pin them down and we can't put any teeth into it, so what do we do?
So I think one of the problems as well is, and I don't want to say this too loudly, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe when a citation is written to somebody, there's nothing to enforce payment for that citation. They could take that citation and flip it over their shoulder and walk away, and there's no enforcement. We can't do anything to those people if they decide to look at you and laugh and tear the ticket up.
Add it to their city bill.
Is there?
Well, that's what I.
Turn their water off.
No, I mean, just animal citations. what I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
so-
No parking, yeah.
Especially in California.
I think there's some.
$5 and then $10. It should be more like $200. Like you're letting your dog either hurt people, be in the street, you're abandoning it. Somebody else is picking it up. The city is paying for it.
But they
Like,
won't pay,
there should be
unfortunately.
something more than just like.
Yeah, so the first offense is 50, the second is 100, the third is 200, and then the fourth has a fine and the mandatory spay or neuter and microchip. And what George is referring to is correct. I mean, we send citations and fines. If they don't pay them, we can send them to collections. People who don't pay their fines don't really care if they get sent to collections. And people have said, you know, why don't you attach it to their utility bill? We can't legally do that. Your utilities are separate, and we can't penalize your utilities for not paying a fine. And so we do process them, but then, like for us, for example, if we wanted the city attorney to file something in court to get a judgment against them, we're gonna pay the city attorney, I don't know, $5,000 to collect a $100 fine. So we send them to collections, but unfortunately, a lot of times the people who get sent to collections don't care what their credit looks like.
And that's what I was referring to.
I saw Brittany and Scott.
Oh, I had a couple. One was, I know you're saying, you know, how do you enforce it for the people that don't line up to get their license? I know in some counties, if your dog is visible on the street and it doesn't have its license, they write you up. So if you're out walking your dog and it's not wearing its license, fine. Your dog is in your front yard where anybody can see it running around, it doesn't have a license, it's a fine. And, I mean, there's people all the time with their dogs out, running around with nothing on. I mean, that would be one way to get, I mean, it's not gonna get the strays that are on the street all the time, but it's gonna get a big chunk of that aren't coming in to register.
So in that scenario, if we give them a fine and they just rip it up like you're saying, then it still hasn't.
Square one, yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out, like, how do we get some teeth into this? And you say it's to the chief, you say it's an infraction. Is there anything behind an infraction besides a citation that we could do to?
It's an infraction, so it's a citation only, and we have that ticket process all citations for us. And, yeah, collecting is a different story.
Could you possibly charge that on their utility bill?
You can't do
You
it.
can't put anything on someone's utility bill that's not a utility charge.
That would be perfect, but
How can we make it?
They sweep it up.
Mary?
So we don't have, access to the city license. I think that if the shelter had access to write one of those up, I'm not saying collect your fees, but if we do it free for a while, let's say a year, let's do it for free. So like the 450 or 76 dogs or 86 dogs that we just had spayed neutered with a rabies vax, we could have been writing those out for city license, and each one of those could have already had one. The problem with a microchip is that it's registered under a phone number and email and address, but mainly, you know, it's done by phone. So it's easy for people just to disconnect and get a different phone number if they they want to go dump their dog somewhere, you know what I'm saying? So you can't really go find them. Nobody has the manpower, the time, the money to go locate people over, really, dogs, okay? So we don't want to push microchips as a way to control. What you say for microchips is, it's a way to get your dog back. You know, it's for protection of your dog. If you guys sit around and you just keep trying to push this as it's mandatory, we want your dog's microchip so we can keep up with it, so we can, you know, if people are gonna start shying off from it. So we always make sure that when we're doing microchips, it's for the safety of the animal and for the people. It's your approach. It's your approach to the way you handle people. If you're going to someone's house, like our ACO, and their dogs are already out, and they're always out, your first response should be to them, what can I help you with? Why are your dogs out? Is there something we can do? Because you will get much further with them by being nice than by being a jerk.
She has made me go repair fences.
We have,
In town.
and that's because that's what they needed. So I think it's very important that we really take into consideration of what is going on with the people first, and then find out why the animals are being done this way or why they're being let out. You know, it's very important that you realize it's mainly about the people. So I think it's all on the approach. So I do think that with microchipping, it's an awesome thing, and I believe these people like it. But I also believe maybe if we could be writing alongside of that the city license for them, we could have already had 500 animals done. Does that make sense? But because I don't have access to that, and I have to say to them, you have to go over to the city and get that part, they don't do it. But it could have been done already, and then there's your second way to know where that animal is and who it belongs to. So I think it's just working on it together and trying to figure out, everybody wants to come to the shelter. They come to the shelter, they're getting it all done right there. You know what I mean? So why not let us do that way so we get it done? But I do believe, we know who you're talking about. That's how well we know the animals, okay? We know who that is.
Exactly.
We text each other. We
yeah.
could tell each other something about an animal.
We know.
Oh, let me look back. Okay, this is who it is.
We do
know who it
keep
is.
files. We copy Facebook posts. We listen to people. We get a picture of that dog off of Facebook, and we wait for that owner to respond. That's my dog. We screenshot it. So here now we have a name and that dog. Might not be microchipped, but I know where that dog goes. I know who the owner of that dog is. So we have that as backup also. So we're not just relying on microchips. We're not. We do a lot of things behind the scenes that nobody knows. But you bring a dog around, and I guarantee you one of us is going to know where that dog goes and who the owner is.
Mary, did you have something to add?
Well, it has to do with the category, how codes or infractions and all of that stuff. So my question relates to that. Is there not a way that we can change the way this is categorized and make it not just an infraction? So that it does have more teeth? I mean, if I don't pay my ticket for parking or whatever it is, I'm gonna end up in court. Does it cost a whole lot more money to do that? To change the way it's set
That
up?
I don't know. I'd have to ask the city attorney, but I know we looked at it a while back and he said there wasn't a way to make it like a misdemeanor. And the people who get infractions that they don't respond to in regards to driving lose their license, and that's their penalty. And there's not something like that for us to take away. I mean, we could take away their dog license, but they probably don't have one. So, I mean, I can ask the city attorney if anything's changed, but that's really a legal question for him.
No, and that's law, that's trying to change the law, that's assembly, lobbying, that's a 10-year try.
What is the city doing
So I don't want to speak for the police department, but I'm going to answer this anyway because one of my pet peeves is people on Facebook saying there's a vicious dog over here and we called the PD and they didn't respond. Just because you think it's vicious doesn't mean that it meets the legal definition of vicious. So a dog can appear to be intimidating, but that doesn't mean it's a vicious dog.
No, I mean,
So if a dog,
where there was like a bite,
yeah, so if there is a vicious dog, the police department will always respond if there is a vicious dog, and then Sean can talk about what they do with it, but.
Normally vicious, if they bit somebody, there's a quarantine period. There's a quarantine period to make sure that they are not rabid. So whether they're quarantined at home, at a shelter, impound, or wherever, it's kind of up to the officer depending on the circumstances and what all happened. It could have been, you know, you were messing around with somebody's property you shouldn't have been, their dog didn't like it, bit you. Like I said, it's gonna depend on the circumstances and how they can quarantine that dog. Depending on the circumstances, citations can be issued, dogs can be seized, it just depends on how everything goes. Problem is, once we intake the dog and keep it, case is done, figured out, they either get the dog back, go through a hearing, then it's kind of up in the air after that what happens.
You know, I was on SARB, and for each, the parents, for every time they came in or did not come in, if they had to keep, their child was not going to school, or they still had the first meeting, the second meeting, by the third meeting, the parents were they were fined. If not, then the last resort was they would spend time in jail. So you figured if you know these animals, you've already owners, and you've already given them, says, hey, let's go to the pokey, sorry, because you're not doing your job
Yeah,
as
but-
being a parent.
Yeah, but Ed Code is different than
Yeah.
those
And
kinds
I'm
of
gonna
laws
come
are different
across
because
probably
that's
as the only one who's here
CPS.
that doesn't care about
Yeah.
it. But I'm probably,
Yeah.
I have more animals, I've had more animals than probably a lot of you combined, but I love them. But what you guys are, everything I've heard here has nothing to do with solving the problem, which is the people. Okay? What we need to do, I recommend getting this guy whatever education he needs and getting him a full-time position and giving him the full weight of whatever authority he can have. That's what we need. Then, what we need to do, you're expecting the city to educate people who don't give a crap about animals. And that's not their job. You can call all day long and people post all day long. I see a dog walking down the street, somebody come get him. PETA, all those will tell you, don't do that. If it's not, and it fills up the animal shelter, then when they do get a necessary call, they can't fill it, they can't take them, there's no room. And but the bigger issue is, like you said, we'll offer free this, free that, free that. This entire town's becoming a free everything. If you can't afford an $8 license, don't have a dog. And I don't have a dog license. We'll say that right now.
But his dog hasn't been out lately.
Yeah.
He just lives down
See
there.
you, see you tomorrow at the shelter.
Yeah. And the rabies thing is the issue. I mean, and they're great dogs. They're never, litters come and go, and you don't have an issue. But if they can't get one, how do they do the other? And you were saying, they all get chipped, they get that, and not getting the city license. Well, you guys have to do what you do. I'm just asking, how does the shelter allowed to hand something back if the city knows it's not necessarily a safe dog? It doesn't have its rabies shots. And my dog has been picked up too. My dog turned himself into the animal shelter when it was out by the marijuana place. They called me, said he's sitting out here. So it just, everybody wants the same thing, but how do you educate these people that just don't,
They don't
everything's
care.
disposable these days. You tell them, here's your fine because your dog's been out 3 times. Well, keep the dog. I'll have another one by dinner.
Exactly.
Well,
That's the issue.
That's where I was talking about when I said there's a disconnect, because there's two sides, and they both feel very vehemently about their opinion being the right one. And as a community, I think that there are some things we could do to strive, like have a dog awareness or pet awareness thrust, make a focus, tell the businesses that we're doing something like that, and just keep reminding people, tell the kids at school, they're the easiest ones to educate with these. I have elementary school students that are coming home with all sorts of wacko things that I know they're getting from the school. I'm sorry, they're not just wacko things, there's some environmental things that I'm going, Anyway, they're very easy to influence, and then the kids go home and tell their parents, and it could make a difference. But I think we have a lot of power, just with the people here. We have business owners, we've got councilmen, people that are in charge. You can do it. Talk among yourselves and create a focus to do that. You've got a website, we've got a webpage with thousands of people that visit. There's a lot of influence there. You can steer things.
So is that a recommendation that the city do better outreach to the public?
Outreach at the school's a good idea.
We did that today. And Mary Jo Walker at the Sunset School, she's on it, let me tell you.
I saw.
She is on it.
I
So-
saw you guys walk in when I was driving by. I'm like, oh, there they are, coming from
Oh,
Sunset.
yeah, they're, Mrs. Walker, you're not gonna beat
Yeah,
her on
and she's
teaching
got
the
Cody.
kids how to treat
Cody,
animals.
So
What the city could do with the police department and the licensing, to try to get people to license the animals.
What if you had like, for a while, on one Saturday a month or something, just set up in different neighborhoods, just set up a booth in a neighborhood and say, we're gonna be in your neighborhood on Saturday from noon to 4. Bring your dog down, get a free treat, get them registered.
You can't
So,
do that because
that's-
you can't register it without rabies.
right. So about probably maybe 6 years ago, when the gas chamber was decommissioned and we had the big deal and we made a deal with San Francisco SPCA and Hope and a couple other different places, the city took a lot of time and effort, and we really delve into this to try and figure out how could we solve this issue. And directly from the top lawyer of the SPCA in San Francisco, probably the most liberal, dog-loving people you could think of, she said it's all about access and you don't have it. She said, and you won't get it either because we've talked to the vets around here. They're not interested in coming. They're not going to. So without vets coming, you're not going to get the registration because you're not going to get the rabies. So that was one of the legal things that and I remember this, when we talked to the city attorney at the time, how can we require rabies shots and require registration of animals when there's no one within a certain amount of distance to be able to give those? That was one of the things. The second was that we could not afford it, no matter what, to be able to house all the animals. So that's when we decided as a city that we were going to, and it's not in the ordinance, the ordinances should be updated, where we were going to say if they were not vicious, we weren't going to pick them up. But that's led into an entire different thing that I kind of wanted to talk about. Just one of my points tonight is that because the city hasn't picked them up, the public has decided that that's their duty to pick them up. But the idea with the SPCA, with the lady is that the reason you're not picking them up is because they will go home. But the public is negating this from happening because the public is holding other people's animals hostage. And it's actually illegal in the city of Coalinga to do that. 6.112, strays. No person except a society incorporated within the state of California for primary purposes of preventing cruelty to animals shall harbor any lost or strayed dog or cat or any other animal. When any such animal shall be found which appears to be lost, stray, or feral, the person finding it shall immediately notify animal control officer so that the animal may be impounded. Retaining a stray animal after notifying an animal control officer shall not constitute a violation of this section. So like I say, the code needs to be updated because obviously, we've went through having animal control and then not having animal control and then relying on Give Me Love and not giving them all the tools that they need to be able to do what they need to do. But the rules that we can apply to people based on the ability for what they can get in a town without having to go elsewhere. So you have people that have dogs and cats and things that are older, and we're going to decide, hey, we need to force these people to do this, or else we're going to bring the law down on them. But yet, a lot of these people don't have access to these services. And so I think the city needs to work with the shelter and work with Hope and work with other foundations and Tractor Supply, and that we need to do it. And this is hard because we had the head of the SPCA. She said she would pay for it all. She said, I'll pay for it. She told the vets, I will pay for the scenario. Guess what? They weren't having it. They said no. And so that's the scenario that we're in Kalinga,
I
unfortunately.
understand a vet won't come here and open an office, but I know the vet in Lemoore, he's up in the canyon all the time. He won't come over here for a weekend.
No,
and-
he won't. I asked him personally.
So
Well, I'll
have,
ask him when I take my dog.
Marissa, have you or anyone for the city?
That's crazy to me.
talk
They're
to
making
Tractor
money. Why
Supply?
would they not come? And set up.
I have not had contact with Tractor Supply yet. I don't even know who their contact is. I've just been told that the assistant manager of the Hanford store is going to be the store manager for the Kalinga store, and that a lead worker from Paso or something is going to be the assistant manager, and then everybody else they're hiring local. And I don't have a contact there, so our contact is the developer until Tractor Supply moves in.
Okay.
We had Valley Oak, from Visalia coming here twice a year to do the rabies and vaccinations, clinics here. And they have lost their vet, so they have one right now, and so they are no longer even seeing us as shelter for our, so we don't have cheap pricing anymore. But anyway, to fix the animals, so we asked about Abby, we went to Abby in Fresno, they won't come here, and they have 8 vets on staff, and no one would come here. We asked in Lemoore, cause that's where we're going right now, is the Kings one, and, we asked them because he comes over here to do the large animals and they weren't willing to come here to Kalinga anymore. My understanding is he did come here before to do clinics a while back, years ago, but he's not interested in that any longer either. So, I don't know,
How much is a rabies vaccine roughly?
about $25. And they really messed up taking it away from the shelters, what they did.
And saying that they don't have access to these services at all is not true. I mean, Give Me Love just did, I don't know how many animals where people didn't even have to transport them. You paid, what, it was $10, right?
Yeah.
And your
$10,
animal
we had
was
people not being
spayed,
able to or
vaccinated,
wanting to
and
do that.
transported for you. The only thing you had to do was drop it off and pick it up on the same day. So, I mean, they're making this, I don't know if it's possible for the city, but can the city have more things like that? And I know we're saying, stop giving everybody everything for free, but the fact is that if you have an overpopulation, eventually it ends up our problem anyway. At the shelter, we have to pay the shelter whatever money, or we have to pay the ACO whatever money. You end up with a pack of, dogs, cats, whatever on the street. And even if you can't spay and neuter everything, any decrease is going to help in the long run. Because if you only had 3 stray animals, and each of those only had 3 stray females, and each of them had 1 female a year, within 5 years you still have 48 animals. They're doubling their population. That's just with 3. If you caught 2 of those 3, yeah, you would still have like 16 at the end of those 5 years, but 16 is a lot less than 48. So, if you would, maybe there's a way to do, I don't know, can the ACO offer a transport day? Like, okay, hey, you guys, maybe we can find a vet, they won't come here, but, or maybe we can work with somebody and say, okay, can you dedicate 1 day once every couple of months to Kalinga, and we will just transport everybody's dogs for them,
Are you talking rabies, Brittany, or are you talking spay neuter?
Whatever we could get.
Spay neuter. Spay neuter right now is a huge issue. We just paid $500 per dog to get them fixed. So, so right now,
And those weren't big.
okay, here's our thing. We paid $65 for a male cat with Valley Oak, and right now we're paying $250. So, yeah, it's a huge, huge problem. And to do a female dog of any weight that's 30 and above, you're looking at $500.
$500.
I don't know what to do about that for people. I just don't know. I mean, we're working on grants, but I don't know what to do.
Yes,
So you look at the people
Yes,
in
that's what we
town
told them
and
today.
they're not willing to give $12 for rabies because they might not have it, and now we're gonna say you're mandated to fix this animal at $500 to $700 if it can. If it doesn't have complications. We had one of our dogs, it was over $1,000 because it had complications.
So, in the past, Hope Foundation used to do stuff with Kalinga through the Women's Club and stuff, and I don't know how all that worked.
Very
But
hard to work with.
that's what I was gonna ask. So their prices on their website are lower. I don't know if they don't do shelter animals and they only do privately owned animals. I don't know what the deal is with them, but is there a reason why we couldn't do something and transport with them or something?
We tried working with them. You have to even buy the paperwork to fill out for each animal. It's a ridiculous mess. Plus, we had to go one day and then come back the next day to get them. It was just so much drama to use Hope. We tried to use Hope recently for the dogs that we needed done to go to the prison program. You can't even get an appointment with them. And we
That's
tried
what-
to do it
yeah.
under us
It's hard to
personally,
get an
not the
appointment.
shelter. We thought if each one of us would take a dog and tried to do this, and then we couldn't even get an appointment.
They won't do dogs over 80 pounds either.
Yeah.
What about?
Yeah, we knew, we figured that out, yeah.
Um,
When we took our dog in, or tried to get our dog in with Hope, it took, 3 to 4 months before we could get her in, and, yeah,
And she had to lose weight.
our girl had to lose some weight
So,
before she went in.
I think Shannon has a comment, and then Michelle, and then Mary.
Thought about the idea of like a homegrown vet before, like is there a way that we could sponsor somebody, give them a scholarship, work with the school and the college to get them through their schooling, get them licensed, they'd have a monopoly if they opened up here. Is there
So there is a girl, and I'm not going to say her name, or I guess a woman. I'm not going to say her name to put her on the spot. She's from Coalinga, and she went to vet school, and she graduated from vet school, and her sibling works for the city. And so I contacted her and asked her if we built her a vet clinic and we gave it to her for free rent and all of the stuff, would she open here? And she laughed and said, no, nobody's going into private practice vet service. It's too expensive. The liability insurance would kill me and you can't afford to pay it. So that's an issue we'd run into sponsoring also. And then sponsoring someone through school is also difficult because we can't require them to work for us for a certain period of time. So we could pay for them to go to school, we could have them sign a contract, and we can say, you have to stay in Coalinga for 10 years to pay it back, and they decide they want to leave, and there's not really an enforcement.
Michelle.
I know most of the discussion has been about dogs, but at least in my neighborhood, a bigger issue is cats. Feral cats, abandoned cats, and, cats that come in and have 3 litters a year sometimes, over and over and over again. And, so I want to know what the city's program is about dealing with these cats. I know that a few years ago, I managed to catch one and take her and her kittens in to give me love, and Lori was, able to take care of that issue. So we stopped that mother cat from having kittens. But our neighborhood is pretty much overrun with cats, and they are a safety hazard. I'm trying to protect my cat from one of them. I ended up getting a cat scratch infection. They poop all over your yard, they spray, they fight with your cats in your backyard or your front yard or whatever. So if Give Me Love is not supposed to have all those cats, what does the city have as a program for dealing with feral cats and abandoned cats?
Currently, there is no program. Cats in Coalinga are considered free roaming, so they're basically like squirrels. There's not a program for them, and that is common. It's not specific to Coalinga. Again, not the best scenario, but it's not just a Coalinga thing. But I know that we have talked about what would it look like to do like a trap, neuter, release, is that what TNR stands for? Program, and what would funding need to be for that, and who would do that, and how would we find a vet? And right now, if vets are charging, $550 or something, I don't know if it's something that could be sustained. It's definitely something to look into, but to do as many cats as we have, it's not something that might be financially feasible.
So it's basically left to individual residents to deal with that, is what you're saying?
Currently, yes.
I know someone who's done almost 50 animals in her neighborhood, the feral cats. She lives on the edge of town.
So do I.
Yeah, I know. She's not in your neighborhood, but yeah.
So what's do you guys know what is the cost for cats similar to dogs on getting spayed?
$250 for a male right now.
Oh my
I didn't even ask female after I heard that.
Oh wow. Do you know what's caused the massive increase?
It's not just a
You know what, I don't know, but since COVID, it's like, I haven't figured it out. It's like they all tripled their prices and you can't get in. I don't know what the issue is. They say it's just a vet shortage, and
I know my
that's just
personal
its
vet.
going rates.
I know my personal vet.
Research on prices in other states to see what,
States,
other states, to see what vets are charging for these services in other states.
no.
Just curious, you know.
I'm
Load up the big
not
rig.
traveling out of state with a bunch of cats, I can assure you that.
With
We're gonna get one of those chicken trucks, right?
our state and the massive
Right.
exodus of blue collar workers, are the vets leaving too? You know,
Yeah.
maybe that's what,
That
maybe
is
that's
it.
why we don't have vets.
There are no vets, I'm telling you, and there are none really coming out of schools for them anymore either. So I don't know what everybody's gonna do here pretty soon, but COVID's killed us.
Yeah, well, and my personal vet was saying that after COVID, there was a huge influx of patients, and they stopped
There
taking
is.
new people because the people they already had 8 more
Has
people.
anyone
very
reached up,
hard.
I don't even know if this is a real vet or not, but Harris Ranch. We took one of our cats out there, they had their vet coming in and he fixed it, and I don't know if he just took him behind the barn or what, but the cat came out perfectly fine. They have a license, I don't know what facility they have, is what I'm saying, she
We
just took
did.
him to work.
We have talked to a couple of people from out there, and they had said that they would be interested, but then they never reached out again.
Maybe
It's
if the
just
city
been
could
dropped.
reach out on behalf, saying, hey, we have a need, is this something we could set up, once a month or something where we could, I recommend that you reach out to Harris and see, and I don't know if he's on contract, I don't know if he's in, how he works, I just know he took care of one of mine.
Mary?
So, have you looked in the direction of Paso Robles and all that? Because there's tons of vets over there. Is that,
Isn't that
is
where
that a
you
sore
work?
subject?
That's where we're going.
Okay.
Okay.
No, that's where we just took our 500 animals, was to Paso.
Yeah.
But he worked only with our grant, he is not our vet, so we were very lucky to even come across him to finish, because we had started in Morro Bay. The vet, it was too much for him, he said no, he could not do it, and luckily the one in Paso picked us up and said, I will do your grant for you. So once the grant ended, we were done. We had, bless his heart, I appreciate his help, but we had some serious issues with the females that he fixed. So, chances are we would not take another
Well,
female there.
right now, I'm asking for the rabies issue. It seems like a retired vet or something with a big heart and maybe a little, I don't know, it just sounds like something that somebody could get excited about.
Well, if we could transport to Hanford, I know that Hanford does a reduced cost, vaccine clinic the first Saturday of every month, right there at the Hanford Veterinary Hospital. You don't have to be, it doesn't have to be your vet. People just need a way to get there, and you stand in the line, you fill out a little paper, you can leave your dog in the car or whatever. In the transport bus.
Then we should publicize that sort of stuff, Brittany.
Okay. All right, so
Talk to me.
we've heard some ideas from the citizens. What do we got so far, Marissa?
Leash laws, microchip registrations, free licensing, dog licenses at the shelter that they can fill out, full-time animal control officer, city to do better outreach, and city to do outreach at schools, and then to contact the Harris Ranch vet.
Does anybody have any, this whole thing is in order, and I know that, this is not something that can be solved overnight, and we probably need to have, routine meetings about this, and we do have committees that are focusing on this as well. This was kind of a meeting outside of that.
That's the one that's the Chiefs Advisory Board covers animal control.
Yeah, and so the public's also welcome to go to those. And, this isn't ever an issue that's been dropped. This is an issue that just keeps going forward, and unfortunately, there's not a solution. And so we try to do the best that we can. As a city, I've been involved in at least 2 or 3 of these, and I know that the shelter is also trying to figure things out and trying to make, things work. But the ideas from the citizens, this is what we got. This is the best idea, is to get ideas from the citizens in. So does anybody else have any ideas before we close this meeting? And we'll send the city back with these ideas, and we'll try and see if we can't put together a list of things to bring back at another meeting to try and rediscuss. But if somebody else has something in the interest of, just keeping things on point, please bring it up.
Rick.
You know, years ago, I don't know how many of you are here, but I'm sure some of you remember, we used to have a pet rodeo where during Horn Tour Derby or one of the other events, we would have that whole thing when people would bring their dogs down and get vaccinated, give out the license from the police department. I mean, I remember doing that, and 3 of my dogs went through that whole little deal, and they got their shots, the license and everything, and then that, to me, was always successful. We always had a lot of people out there, people standing in line, getting their thing. I believe, Sean, you were on one of the, weren't you in there on that, issuing the license at one of these, some of these rodeo things, pet things we used to do in the plaza? Well, maybe somebody who looked like you. Yeah.
23 years goes by kind of quick and a few events.
But anyway, we used to do that, and it was pretty successful.
I remember it.
The other thing is, I don't know, is there anything that maybe we can get West Hills College to maybe start a program or a class for veterinary? I mean, they have other classes they do. They have the psych tech stuff. They do medical. So maybe we can maybe we can see if they will start a class for doing veterinarian. You know? I mean, we can throw it out there. We got a new president of the college. Maybe she would be interested, or maybe the chancellors or somebody would be involved, want to get involved in starting a program up for that.
Well, like maybe a vet tech, but I know that like to become a vet, you would have to, like you can have the classes, because my niece is going to school to be a vet right now, and she went to.
She need a job?
Yeah, she went, well, she's working on it, but, I know that you can get your, you know, your AA or your AS and your beginning classes, but as far as like, that's the hard thing too, is it's really expensive and it's
What's the
very,
restriction
very
on
long.
giving
but-
rabies shot?
You have to be a veterinarian.
You have to be
Yeah,
a
they
vet?
changed it all of a
California
sudden,
state.
you have to be a vet to give it, so.
like a live virus or something?
No different than parvo and all that, but I don't know what it is. I don't know, they just said that now you have to have it done by a vet or they won't acknowledge it. So like, should I give my own dog a rabies vax, because you can purchase it wherever, it wouldn't be, so if he bit somebody and they asked for that, it would be no good. They wouldn't acknowledge that because it wasn't done through a vet. Yeah, it's craziest thing I've ever seen.
Well, in a lot of places, it's the same for parvo too. Like if you wanna board your animals or you wanna go to some vets, they won't, if you over-the-counter vaccinated, they just,
Well, I'm looking to do something with the schools as far as like the whole child, and with the city, with the fire department. I mean, this is like my vision, my passion, but like having like stations where we do like the at the beginning of the school year, the back to school, whatever it's called, but yeah, but do more of like having our counselors there, having our having like the Fresno County come for like our foster youth and our homeless and all that stuff. So all these ideas about having like community events, I know it takes people, I know it takes manpower, and I know it's the same people that are always volunteering. It's that way at church and it's all around, but if we could add that on to just, you know, like Mary was saying, like with the just the information and getting the information out there. I know that the people that love animals and are responsible, they're going to be the ones that are mostly taking in that information. However, you know, little bit by little bit, maybe we can get the community more information, more informed, and little by little it can get better. And then like with the West Hills College, I think that that's great as far as getting them involved. They can be on that, you know, maybe start out with just one Saturday and we can bring, I don't know what it entails, but like food is like big with people, you know, so if you not free food, but you know, have like food trucks come out and stuff like that, and have like a community event where it's involving the city, you know, city employees. So I know it's not going to fix the problem, but at least so people are informed more of what's going on. Because I noticed on Cling Assistance, it's the same people, and it's
Same ones not here,
the same. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So if you,
right?
and you know, there are people out here, out in the city that are breaking code and things like that, but they're more apt to come to, you know, a community event and bring their kids, and even some of them you even see the dogs around, or you see, you know, so just informing, because I'm even thinking to myself, I feel bad, but our dogs have their rabies shots, and but we don't have our dogs
License?
I guess we need to do that, but
Try to have a library.
they're definitely chipped, and we like adore our dogs, like we love our animals, you know. We have our cat indoors, but even as a citizen, and you know, if you knew where to go, or if it was a little bit easier, or if it was in one spot, you're going to have people more apt to hear it and listen to it than going on Cling of Citizens or something like that. So
Lori and I were talking about this. We've been running the spay and neuter, and then people come in looking for an animal or want to get a vaccination. There's a lot of people who don't know we're here.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
There's a lot of people do not have social media at all. So when we're posting things, thinking, oh, we're getting it out there, they don't have social media.
Exactly.
So we were just talking about, well, what are we missing? How can we do it? Because they don't know we're present here. They don't know. People walk up every day and say, I didn't know this was here. So what are we gonna do? How do we get that information out?
Well, one thing I mentioned to the city council, again, I'm gonna age myself here, when I was a kid, there was a Channel 4.
Oh, yes, I love that.
Can the city, you can come up with your app for your phone, everyone's got smart TVs at home. Can the city come up with an app that can be downloaded onto your smart TV that does Foggy Day schedules, it does the lunch schedule?
You know, it used to go down.
And you can post stuff, you can have
Cartoons
missing
in the
dog,
morning.
you can have, you know, put them on milk cartons. Is that something the city could look into? I mean,
Get some big dog ears for the car.
Just city stuff. We don't have access to the school's stuff for Foggy Day schedule or lunches or anything.
And a lady in the
thing, and that was something, when I got up in the morning, my mom already had that channel on, and it was just going in the background.
Because we had
If
foggy
somebody-
days, because we had late school.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the
But I mean, if there
buses.
was an app that somebody could just click on and
Like,
it
woohoo!
updated stuff
But
like
it's,
Foggy
that.
day.
but that's still an app.
Yeah.
It's still not.
But they're not logged into the Facebook where they have, you know, you're not gonna see many kids 20 to 35 on Facebook these days. It's old people. That's what they tell me anyway,
That's
so.
true.
and
Are there any grants to the city
They're on Discord.
for the spaying, neutering, rabies? I know Gimme Love does theirs, they go out and get them themselves, but is there anything, you can get grants to help with shelter, or build shelters, and for, you know, people stealing out of grocery stores, but is there anything for this, for animal control, this type of thing, for,
There hasn't been, not to say that there won't
State
be,
isn't,
but there hasn't been, not for the city.
so Corey in the back. Sorry to interrupt. Yes, she has something to say.
So I had a couple ideas, I guess, well, a couple things. Like as far as licensing, that's not exactly information that everybody knows that you need
That's what I was
like
saying,
ordinance. Because I've been here 20 plus years, I never knew that there was a thing that said I had to have my dogs licensed. So maybe we could look into, like, I've seen tons of flyers in my utility bill, my city bill, put in a flyer, say, hey, and you, not confrontational, but say, hey, did you know that this is a thing that you probably should look into?
That's a good idea.
Also, Gimme Love is here for your, you know, your needs, if you need help with anything. And what about doing like a booth, like get the chamber involved with all these community events that Scott's doing? What if we get a booth out there for licensing the dogs that already have the rabies and that just didn't know that they had to have a license too? Or, you know, the microchips, if they want to get their dogs chipped, there's tons of events throughout the year that they put on.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to say before we close this meeting and take all this information and have the city look at it and find out possible solutions and more things that we can add to the table?
I know a lot of people don't actually look at their inserts in their city bills, but is that possible to send out like a little, like you do for Duck Day, just if there are ever things going on, like when they were doing the spade day, like, oh, hey, guess what, our shelter's doing this, or, oh, hey, guess what, this weekend is, you know, if we get any events going on, or even just informational stuff like, hey, did you know we had a shelter? Just a reminder. I don't know.
Let's get a marquee.
Even if it only catches 20 people, it's 20 more than it did before.
Yeah, so we don't do our own utility billing here. We generate the bill, but they're printed somewhere else and sent out. And a lot of people don't realize that. So in order to get something in the utility bill, the city needs it like 45 days before the bill would go out. And it's about $450 every time you put an insert in. And so, so we can do that. It is a possibility. But one of the difficulties is, I mean, we have stuff that we'll put inserts in utility bills. We'll put it on Facebook. We'll put it on the website. We'll put it on the Pride sign. Mary will put it in the front page of the paper. And I'll have 25 people call me all upset and say, we didn't know. Why didn't you tell us? And so there's not like the perfect way to communicate with everybody.
Appreciate the little note on the front this week.
Yes, thank you.
Do we do that sign in front of, right by the college, you know, your
The
city
marquee, yeah.
Yes.
Do we do things in Spanish? I didn't know if we did.
If it's sent to us in Spanish.
So if we did something in Spanish, which it seems to me that that's where we kind of do have a gap sometimes too, at the shelter.
Yes.
That maybe that would be helpful, you know, because we do a lot on Facebook as a group, but it's all in English.
Yeah,
Right.
but if they speak Spanish, their Facebook will be in Spanish and they'll get it in Spanish.
Okay.
Oh, can I
Yes,
say
it
one
does.
more thing?
Okay.
Go ahead, Mary.
When I moved here 49 years ago or so, no one's counting, when we first came into town, someone from the community, and I don't know if it was the chamber or who, but when we had our utilities turned on, someone came to our house with a whole handful of information brochures, a couple coupons for eating out, and it told me, not everything, but it told me about all the community clubs, about the college, the school, I mean, all that stuff. It had all the hours, and it was really helpful. So we felt welcomed, because we're from a big city. That would never happen in a big city. But we're a pretty small town, and it seems like if there was just something either available at the library, some sort of welcome packet, to the left, that might be something too, where you could include that information about all of that. Oh yeah, there's Nathan, sorry Nathan.
Or even real estate, like real estate
Right.
offices or whatever.
So the city could do a lot better job in outreach, and we've got it on the list. So that's something that we'll take into consideration. So it looks like it's about 7:30. Anyone else got anything else before I close this up?
I recommend we put some giant dog ears and a tongue on the van, right? Because you know if we drive that around town, everybody's gonna talk about it. Then we can just swap out our informational billboard once a week. Hey, did you know?
Turn into the Dumb and Dumber van.
Right? Big old dog van.
All right, we're going to close this meeting at 7:30. I want to thank everyone for coming. I know that everyone here cares about animals, and we're all working towards the same goal, so I appreciate it. Thank you so much.